Hello again, everybody, and welcome to The New World from Nikola Tesla. And apparently I'm going to have to be a little bit more clear and a little bit more specific and in more detail exactly what I am talking about here. Because apparently every time I try to go to talk to electromagnetism professors and electricity and generator engineer people, I keep getting myself getting disrespected and called a crackpot. I was banned from the physics forums online for being and called a crackpot, and I'm basically being called a kook and a crazy person for trying to tell people what I'm about to tell you right now. So if you just take a few minutes and just listen to what Tesla's work was, what it was all about, and what he accomplished, here are the details a little bit more specific and clear for the average person to understand. Okay, what you're looking at here is his first discovery rotating motor. The problem with magnets is that they always have polarities that are constant. You can't change them. So people for the longest time in human history had trouble trying to figure out how to make a motor with magnets, because the polarity of the magnets were permanent and you only get a push and pulling effect when they're facing each other a certain way. Tesla discovered that if he had coils of wire in 4 different locations and 4 more coils of wire that were attached to a flywheel inside those locations, he could alter the current between the 2 coils on the outer and inner part of the motor, and in sequence alternating those currents, you would get a rotation in the direction of current flow. That's what this is right here. This is his first electric generator. This is his first machine that he thought up in a sequence of machines that go together as one unit with one control panel to make or tap into unlimited electricity or free electricity. This is the first motor. This is the first step.
First Tesla induction motor. He built it in 1887 to show that it is possible to produce a very efficient machine based on polyphase current. Here we have again 2-phase current passing into these 4 coils, and a rotor which is rotated in the same way as the spinning egg, but to get a much stronger action required for the motor, we have a short-circuited coils into the rotor.
This is the museum.
Then we pass the current. The motor operates, and its speed is nearly 3,000 revolutions per minute with a 50 Hz current.
Okay, he got 3,000
It's a very powerful motor, over half a horsepower.
Okay, here's the second motor.
In 1882, Tesla discovered the idea of rotating magnetic field produced by 2-phase current.
Now pay attention to what
Here
he's
is the
doing.
machine which is actually designed to show that 2-phase currents, and it contains 2 coils. The current, 2 separate electrical circuits. One coil is going through those 2 rings into the external circuit of the 1 phase, and the other coil is going through the another 2 rings to the another phase circuit. 2-phase alternating currents are fed into 4 coils. When we produce 2 phases current, they will in combined action produce the rotating magnetic field.
See what he's
and
doing?
We can illustrate that by rotating the generator, and that will produce the rotation of the magnetic needle. So,
you see, now look what he did. Try to imagine what he's doing here. He thought up a motor that he could make move with energizing coils of wire in certain sequence that made a motor turn with electricity. Now he used his imagination to build another motor that used that first motor's rotation or polarity switching to run this motor. Or This motor can be operated by cranking or by hand rotation. Like if you can hear him in the background, he's actually only cranking something by hand to make the magnetic field move. So now keep that in mind. You can make this magnetic field rotate, or you can control the magnetic field's location in this ring by cranking something by hand yourself. Now, think about this for a second. The way electricity is generated is by magnets moving through a conductor. Say you have a coil like this. Now, if this was a magnet and this coil was connected to a voltmeter and I went into it like this and pulled it out like that, you would see the voltmeter tip in a certain direction of travel of the magnet, because when you move a magnet in and out of a coil like this, or even on a bicycle, when you see the magnet moving by a coil like that, it makes electricity. That's how electricity is generated. Okay, now that we're all clear on how electricity is generated by moving magnets, let me go into detail now what Tesla did with those motors and being able to control a rotating magnetic field. This is a simple speaker with a magnet on the back, and the magnet is in the shape of a wheel. You have many different sizes. Now if you take the wheel off, say, like I did here, you can put it into a gyroscope-like device like this. You can then not have coils like this, but have like coils like this, not wound into something like this. This is wrong. But stationary wound up coils around the magnetic field of this stationary magnet. Now, from what we just watched, imagine that ring that can control the magnetic field above or below the wheel magnet, controlling the magnetic field that goes in a circle by hand. You know you can crank this and turn the magnetic field in that ring that Tesla made in his discoveries with experimentation like this. In his mind, he knew that if he could crank and make a magnetic field move in a circle like this, he could begin to move a permanent magnet wheel like this in response. The magnetic field would begin to move with that ring above or below. Now, if you had stationary coils around this magnet, you could generate electricity just from the centripetal forces of its momentum. Same thing as taking a magnet and going through or by a coil. You're using a round magnet to go in a circle and go by stationary coils producing electricity. This is called the Tesla generator. Now, this is in the archives of machines that don't work. And I'm going to explain to you that with those machines in the Tesla Museum, the rotating rotor with the rotating magnetic field machine moving the magnetic field in a circle around a permanent wheel magnet that is positioned in between stationary coils. Once you get this magnet up to speed and just keep it there, like, and jolting it every once in a while with alternating current, every once in a while just to keep it going, like pushing a child on a swing, you will get a duplicate of whatever energy you put into this. And the energy that you're putting into this is all electric. This is all electricity. The only thing that Tesla did was arrange the metals and wires in certain ways, in certain different motors, to generate electricity with a wheel magnet. Now, keep in mind, it does not create energy all on its own. Something that would increase energy all on its own and continue to increase energy all on its own, that's perpetual motion. That is impossible because the machine would eventually grow to too much power and it would eventually blow up. That's why perpetual motion is not possible, because any machine you try to keep increasing energy to would eventually blow up. This is controlled all by electricity, and using one's intelligence, you can have a control panel that controls the current. So the only way to increase power from this is by jolting it with electricity from your control panel. It's called using your intelligence to make power. Now, think about this. You get this thing cranking by hand. You get the magnetic field moving in that machine that you just saw. You get this wheel moving by cranking it by hand. Once you crank it by hand long enough and get enough power stored into your batteries or energy storage sources, you then stop cranking it and use that stored energy that you made by cranking it to then now run all your motors that make this turn. And by making this turn at a certain velocity, you can duplicate as much power as you put into it, as long as you maintain that velocity. Even if you turn your current completely off, the thing will still keep spinning in a uniform motion and keep duplicating power. But if the current's off and not pushing it like a child on a swing, the current duplication would eventually go down, because it would slowly come to a stop. Like any wheel you pick up on a bike and start cranking, you see the wheel continue to spin after you crank it for a little bit. This is the same idea. This is the wheel. It's a magnet wheel that you crank on by hand. Once you have enough power to make it run all on its own with yourself, you are the Kickstarter. You are. You kickstart this to get enough power to self-run itself. Then it produces enough power at a constant velocity to keep running itself. And then once you get duplications of power happening, you can then take that power and then channel it back into one initial jolt. Like pushing a child on a swing, but you're constantly increasing the jolt with your duplicated energy that you stored up. You're duplicating power over units of time to re-inject that power in less time. Or say you have 1 unit of time that you inject force into, it gives you X amount of force for X units of time. You take that X units of force you get from duplication, and then you combine it into a new X of force, and you jolt it back into your machine, and you make this velocity increase and keep it at that velocity to duplicate energy. This is called duplication of electricity. This is how electricity should be generated. This is how every single power plant in the entire world should be set up. Magnet wheels moving around stationary coils that run on all of Tesla's motors that he invented himself, all in a single lifetime. So now, I want you to be the judge, and you tell me,